Thank you very much indeed for having me, and thank you very much to Andrew for inviting me today. Clearly I didn't make too much of an awful mess of the last question time, so that's always a bonus. Andrew's actually sort of taken a couple of my first chance away from me by giving me the intro, but I'll just take you through what I'm going to talk through today. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction about myself, LOCOG, and Nielsen. I'm not going to be presenting data today, just to sort of set expectations. This is much more about just sort of how we went about research at LOCOG, the sort of programme that we had in place, and as Andrew suggested, I'll be talking through some of the challenges and some of the sort of high points as well from my personal perspective. I'm going to give you a sort of overview of all the sort of work that we did at LOCOG, but then I'm going to talk specifically about our spectator experience research programme. To be honest, over the last 2.5 years we've done so much research that poor research now would never get us out of the room if I tried to talk you through everything we've done. So I thought it would be good just to focus on one area which I have worked on since I started at LOCOG right through to current day. So I'm very happy to take questions as we go along. I'm also very happy to take them at the end, so if anybody has a query as I'm going along, if there's anything that's not clear, please do shout, and I'm very happy to try and answer them as best I can. So as I say, this is me. As Andrew said, I'm a very sporty person. I played lacrosse myself. I'm also a qualified sports massage therapist, which is something that was particularly interesting to me that I went off and did a few years back. In terms of my research career, I started in an agency, and I've done work both in the private sector and the public sector. As Andrew mentioned, I did a lot of work at Department for Children's Schools and Families and the COI, which was indeed very much like the thick of it. And I am slightly concerned that there is a camera crew somewhere following me around, because after the thick of it, some of you may also have noticed that there was a programme called 2012 on, which followed the fictional life of people running 2012, and was also very, very similar. So, yeah, and with the sort of truth being stranger than fiction, we did all talk about 2012 a lot in our lunch hours and at breaks, but it never got quite close to the tremendous moment that I don't know if any of you saw during the bell ringing extravaganza, which was referenced on 2012, where Jeremy Hunt actually hit someone on the head with a bell as he was trying to ring his, and it fell off and hit a member of the public. Now, if they put that in the programme, everybody would have said, no, Charles. But it was magnificent. It is on YouTube, if anybody wants to do it. I do recommend it, it's absolutely magnificent. So that's me, a sports player, I say, sports spectator, and I absolutely love sport. When we won the games, I spent the next sort of 3 or 4 years looking on the website to see whether there was a research job available, and I did that sort of religiously every month. Until one day there was, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Oh my God, it's my dream job. Oh, damn it. And in fact, I was just about to go on holiday, and I saw the job posted, and the closing date was after I got back, so I had to literally just kind of sit down and write a sort of rather manic covering letter going, I'd be really brilliant for this job. And then went through a kind of a long and tortuous recruitment process, but finally ended up, as I say, in my dream job, for which I'm very thankful, and for which I've no idea what I'm going to do afterwards either. I don't know how anything else is quite going to match up. So, obviously, I think probably everybody knows by now that LOCOG is the London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games. It's a private sector company, and it's the company that was responsible for staging and hosting the games. So the ODA, which was obviously a partner organisation, one of many, was responsible for the building of the infrastructure, stadia, and all the early part of the what came after the bid. LOCOG's roles are actually to put on the show, if you like. Obviously, we started the bidding right back in 2003, and that July 2005 was when the Games was awarded. You know, we've had a lot of people in the business, right up to thousands and thousands during the Games working for LOCOG. But that team that won that bid, I had 3 of those in my team when I started at LOCOG. And they're still working with us now, so they really have worked right the way through from beginning to end, which I just think is what an extraordinary journey. I think mine's been amazing, but you know, I can only imagine what they must be feeling now, having seen it right through from that very beginning. And that's the very famous quote there from Seb, Seb as we like to call him rather than Lord Co. London's vision is to reach young people all around the world and to connect them with the inspirational power of the Games. And you know, I think and hope that we've managed to do that to a large degree. And then in between me and LOCOG is Nielsen. And let me reassure you right away, you know, tonight is not a sales pitch for Nielsen, but in order to kind of talk about a lot of the work we've done, I just wanted to explain how this fits in. In May 2009, Nielsen were appointed the official research partner of the Games. Which allowed them to basically provide all the research services to LOCOG. And Nielsen then were looking for people to fill the roles with LOCOG, and they employed me from May 2010 as the research director for the LOCOG account. There were an embedded team of 4 of us, Nielsen employees, but permanently based with LOCOG in Canary Wharf. So, as a Nielsen employee, I've barely ever set foot in a Nielsen office, I have to tell you, because from the day I started, I've been working on the 22nd floor of the Barclays building in Canary Wharf. We did have another team member that joined us quite late on in the day to help cover social media and web analytics, but effectively it's been mainly the 4 of us covering all the research for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Which has been quite a hectic time, I can assure you. So what we wanted to try and do, and this is very much the LOCOG vision of working with Nielsen, was to have insight underpinning everything. You know, research was there to be used, and they were very keen. Our brand and marketing director, Greg Nugent, was absolutely insistent that research would be a cornerstone of London 2012. And that Nielsen, was therefore tasked with delivering all the insights to allow them to make actionable decisions and go forward and be able to make evidence-based decisions about which route they might go in any given area of the business. So, I mean, that's a bit blowing our own trumpet, world-class research programme, but I think we are very proud of it. We've done a huge amount of research. I'll go on now to talk a little bit about the different types of research that we've covered, just a few of them. But we really have, I think, covered every aspect of the Games. And Greg's vision was that we would never knowingly be out-polled, effectively. If somebody rang us up and asked a question, then we would have the answer. If somebody said, nobody likes you, would be, they do, we can tell you. If somebody said, oh, not sure about that, we'd say, well, we've got the evidence to prove it. And that was his vision from the start, was that we would have the evidence base to be able to offer information, rebut information, and that would be a real, say, cornerstone for LOCOG. This is the direct quote from Greg early on in the process. We're using research to make decisions, and the biggest of meetings are now geared around our findings and insights. And bless his heart, that wasn't bullshit, that was absolutely true. This is just the start. Our vision is to use research to guide us all the way into 2012 and help us make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So that was him driving things from the start. And I think we were successful in achieving what he wanted us to achieve. And this is the way that Nielsen positioned themselves. This is probably the last I'll say about Nielsen specifically. But we very much feel that we were the intelligence behind London 2012, and LOCOG would, I think, agree with that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit now about the different projects that we did. We had huge range of projects and issues and audiences to deal with. I'm sure none of this will come as a great surprise, but we were sort of able to use almost every methodology you could think of, and some of those were very interesting to use. Some of them were not ones that I had particularly been able to make great use of before. We did a lot of online surveys because LOCOG had a huge database that we were able to access and utilise. We did a lot of tracking surveys, we tried app surveys, we did face-to-face interviewing, we tried mystery shopping, which a very successful project on that, which I'll touch on again a little bit later, which was actually done for us by an ICG member. So I'll name check them later, we have got a couple of them. We did geodemographic profiling, hooray! That's why we all call it mosaic or ACORN, isn't it?
Excuse me, Sarah,
yes.
Can I just ask, was all this research confined to the UK, or was it also international?
Most of it was confined to the UK, but we did do some international. I'll come on to point out a couple of places where we did do international work, but primarily it was UK focused.
Okay.
But most of what we did was properly UK focused rather than just London. It was genuinely kind of, nations and regions. We were very, very keen to make sure that we covered the UK in its totality rather than sort of the odd token group up in Edinburgh. And we did feed back into the business via a huge range of options. We have standard presentations, we've done word clouds like Alison shared today, we've used videos, we've used dashboards, we've used kind of you name it, we've tried it in order to try and get it in front of certain people, get traction with certain people, to aim it at a particular individual. We've done an awful lot of trying to put some quite complex data into quite simple formats so that we can get, as our spectator experience head would say, the hairy-arsed venue managers to actually listen to what we were saying. So we've used an awful lot of different techniques. This is just a kind of quick run-through of some of the types of areas of the business that we've done work for. State of the Nation, I'll just tell you, was our kind of ongoing polling, our ongoing tracking survey. So that was a monthly survey with adults, and was supplemented by a quarterly survey with young people. And that was our finger on the pulse, if you like, of the general public, and finding out how connected they felt to the games. Did they think we were running on time? Did they think that the stadium were going to be ready on time early on? Did they think that the opening ceremony was going to be an embarrassing disaster? All these things were things that we were polling right through from 2010 through to right now, really. And then, again, just it's sort of almost impossible to list everything that we touched on. But developing and launching mascots, we did a lot of work at test events, which I'll come on to talk a bit more about. We did Games Maker uniform, torch relay. We did a lot of social media monitoring and web analytics, as I mentioned earlier. We've been doing a fantastic project on changing attitudes to disability. We did a lot of work around our Join In programme, getting local leaders, trying to get communities involved. And throughout we've been kind of testing, monitoring and trying to change the way that people will actually experience the games. So it's just some visuals on. So Games Makers, we did quite a lot of work early on the volunteering programme to try and measure how many people thought that we thought might apply. Which when we did the initial research was over 1 million, and our colleagues in HR just went, oh my god, our system's going to break. We can't have 1 million applications or it's all going to just break down. So we worked with them and the agency to try and tailor the messaging about volunteering to ensure that we really only got people who were serious about it. So making sure that they understood that it wasn't going to be paid. I know that volunteering, you'd think that people would know that, but there were some quite serious messages about you're not going to get accommodation. So if you want to do it and you don't live in London, you have to think about that. we ended up with the volunteering programme, we attracted around 240,000 applicants to be a games maker, of which they chose 70,000. And I think if you've seen all the kind of publicity and positivity around those games makers, I think everybody's agreed that that was a tremendously successful programme.
What criteria did you use to select them?
Oh gosh, I mean they had interviews and all sorts. I mean that's you know, an HR criteria list, but I mean it was mainly about it was about them being themselves and being fun and confident and, you know, genuinely good people. It depended also on what we wanted them to do, and there were a myriad of volunteers, possible jobs. So, you know, some of them we had very specialist technical volunteers who needed to be able to, you know, do timings and, you know, that kind of, you know, actual almost officials, through to people who were just kind of, you know, but people who were showing people where the loos were and telling you, had the big hands on the way to the, from the station, telling you where to go, and it was, about experience, personality, but personality was the thing that was underpinned the whole volunteering programme, was the key criteria.
They had training from McDonald's on how to be nice to people.
They did have
training sessions at McDonald's.
They did indeed.
We've actually got a games maker in the room tonight.
Have we?
Yes, we do. I think within the ICG there were several games makers.
Yes,
I understand.
Yeah, at least 4.
So I'm aware of time. So we all did ticketing, disability, torch, as I mentioned, mascots, our Get Set education programme. We helped develop the uniform for the games makers, so everybody hated it, apologies, but I rather liked it, except it was a bit sweaty. We did also, which I haven't really touched on yet, alongside the sport, obviously we had the whole Cultural Olympiad running right through from, we had the London 2012 Festival that kicked off in June, right through to the end of the Games. And we've been working on evaluating that and the development of communications around that as well. So that's another area that our team was responsible for. So I'm going to talk a bit about the Spectator Experience Programme, which was fairly comprehensive. And just to start by saying, the Spectator really genuinely was at the centre of everything that the London Organising Committee did. Interestingly, it's the first organising committee and the first time the IOC has ever had a spectator experience function separately. They didn't really care about the spectator and their experience very much. It was kind of, as long as all the bits work, then the spectators bound to have a good time, so we won't worry too much about them. So this was the first time that they have pulled to, that there was a truly spectator-focused function, and by that I just mean business area. That's what we call functional areas, is what we call those. You can see there just that the spectator experience team was at the centre of then liaising with all the other functional areas to ensure that that the spectator was, they were there to help champion the spectator, if you like, to all the other functional areas, meaning that they actually took account of the spectator and ensured that their experience would be as good as it could possibly be. So an interesting one that it hadn't been there before. Our brief really was to capture spectator expectations early on, and then experience for as wide a group of ticketed and non-ticketed spectators as we could. We wanted to understand everything we could about spectators, from their kind of behaviour to their emotions, their opinions, what they thought certain things were going to be like, what they were looking forward to, what they thought was going to be dreadful. So we were looking at in the early days for the kind of, what are going to be the big derailers, what is going to actually ruin somebody's day, versus what are going to be those delighters that people go, this is going to be great. And we wanted to establish a programme that we could pass on as well to the IOC and to Rio and to others, so that they've got a solid knowledge base. This is by far the most comprehensive programme that LOCOG has ever done.
Sarah, can I just ask, were people as cynical and as doubting as it was reported?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like me to elaborate? Yes, pretty much. We had a lot of, in both polling and groups and so on, there were a lot of negative feelings, a lot of negative people. as there were just, a lot of that, is then picked up by the media or driven by the media, and who knows which drives which in the end. And it's hard work. Sometimes we would feel quite despondent about, well, we've done all this work and everybody thinks it's still going to be crap. I mean, what can you do? But as you get nearer and nearer, and people start getting caught up in the buzz of it, and the media started getting repetitive, and you then start building, and the crescendo starts building, and then it gets into a positive spiral. But yes, I mean, we did encounter a lot of negativity.
How much of that do you think is media driven?
Do I personally think it's media
Yeah,
driven?
yeah.
A lot. I think
Otherwise not.
if you're reading every day that that it's all too expensive and why we're wasting our money and it's all going to be crap, and well, eventually you think, well, it must be true, mustn't it? If you're constantly reading that, and then somebody else say, oh, did you see that headline in the paper? It's all going to be rubbish. So yeah, I think it does generate.
By the same token, it seems that when it sort of all came good, a lot of media headlines probably reinforced that.
Yes, I think they did, and it was interesting that there were a few elements of the media, I think, late on, as in once the games had started, that in the initial stages were still a little bit negative, and they got shouted down really by the rest of the media and just people in general and people who were going to the games. And it was very interesting that they kind of drifted off and either changed their minds or sort of shut up. So, yeah.
Sarah, did you do research with Londoners on travel behaviour and travel patterns? Because I have a feeling that the swing round to positivity had as much to do with the fact that all of a sudden, after the opening ceremony, London didn't grind to a halt.
I think so. I think transport and security were two of the things that worried people the most. And once we were 2 or 3 days in, and the London Underground hadn't broken down, and the army were fantastic, and all the security was, nobody was having to wait in queues, and it was all lovely. All of a sudden, the two biggest fears had been kind of taken out of the equation. So, it was kind of, right, we've got to find something else to moan about, or we just get on with it and say, hurrah, it's all great. So, I do agree with you that
Because what did your research in that run-up, was that giving you dire predictions about how Londoners were going to react to this tremendous logjam?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, we did some tracking work on transport, and we're also working quite closely with TfL, who were doing their own work. And what it showed was just that people were not planning, not planning ahead, and that we wanted them 6 months out to have planned their journey and to have bought their ticket and to have said, yes, I'm going to go here in this way instead of this way. Well, you know what? It was 6 months to go. People haven't even started thinking about it really. We're trying our best, but that, with the best will in the world, that's very hard for people. And so it was hard because right up to the end, we were seeing things going in the right direction, but there were still people going, oh, I haven't been planned to, well, I'll just do what I normally do, and kind of going, please, please listen. But people did listen, and I thought it was great that TfL put up boards after both games at every station saying thank you passengers for changing your, changing what you did, because we couldn't have done it if you hadn't. I just thought it was a nice touch. Not often you find a good opportunity to praise TfL when you ride the Jubilee line every day.
The positive spiral started. Did that start with the positive local newspaper reactions to the torch, or had it started before
No,
then?
the torch was probably the beginning of the real, the real curve starting. The torch was amazing, and I think that exceeded our expectations. Even though our expectations were high, I think it really did go above and beyond, and the level of local support for that was quite extraordinary. And I think that really
It was a big PR coup.
Yes.
It was on the news every day.
Yes, it was.
For 8 weeks.
It was absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing.
While you were doing your
was that
research,
had that been done in other countries, the circulation of the country with the torch? Or was it?
No, we did it slightly differently to how it had been done before. So it's an interesting learning for Rio to pass that on.
how did, are you going to come on to how LOCOG reacted to each stage of your research? How did they adapt?
If I have time to do that, I'm gonna go through that one. And this is my kind of main slide that I'm going to talk through, so I can try and talk through the different stages and what people did at key points. So this is like our key milestones for the Spectator Experience project. So starting at the top left is back kind of in summer 2010, where we did our first big piece of spectator work, which was a combined call and quant piece. And this at the time was with the database of people who'd signed up for information, because they didn't have tickets at that point. So this is people who'd said they were interested. So our potential spectators. And we did a lot of detailed work, with them, trying to understand how they envisaged the Olympic Games being. Now it's a long way out to be doing that, but we were trying to get a feel for, as I said, you know, the kind of what would ruin somebody's day, how long did people think they were going to have to queue for things. You know, we were trying to get to sort of every aspect. How did they expect their ticket to arrive? When did they expect to be able to, you know, all that kind of thing. With say, surveys. That was we did do some international work there to try and understand whether there were any differences between expectations internationally and within the UK. And we also looked at London versus the rest of the UK there. We did a large-scale project there. Again, ICG member John Armstrong, who did quite a lot of qualitative work for LOCOG, name check. So what LOCOG did with that was it helped them to start understanding spectators overall, and it helped inform then the spectator journey mapping exercise that we did next, which was to take different types of people and try and sort of think through their journey from start to finish. So, you know, from trying to go online and buy their ticket to walking out of the park at the end of their experience and getting home. We then, from that, those two pieces worked very closely with the spectator experience team to create the spectator vision for LOCOG. As I say, no OCOG had ever done this before, so we were really starting from scratch on that. And you know, we wanted to make sure that the reason for doing that was then to take that. We had a big 2-day workshop with all the functional areas to sort of nail them to the floor and tell them how it was going to be for spectators, to make sure that we had consistency and of understanding across all the different areas of what was expected of them with regard to spectators, and what the LOCOG, you know, aim was, you know, for all the different and all the spectator groups, both international, London, UK. So that was a very successful exercise. Some functional areas were more amenable than others, shall we say. 'Twas ever thus in an organisation, I think. But you know, overall, that was really helpful way of going about things. We then did some geodemographic profiling work. We did use Mosaic, and we took our database again, at that point, interested people, and looked at the profiling of that. That was very interesting because ideally we'd have looked at ticketed people, but the timing didn't allow. At that point there was a lot of planning going into the Olympic Park, and we were looking at sort of catering, entertainment, all those types of things. So that profiling work helped us to understand the types of spectators that were likely to be coming, and therefore how we could best service their needs. I could actually have put geographic profiling in again here, because we reran that once we had ticketed people. And it didn't actually change a great deal, which was good for us, because if it had, we'd have been in trouble, because we'd done all the planning on the previous.
Does that explain why the beer was so expensive?
Probably partially, yeah, sorry about that. I mentioned test events. I mean, we did work at 11 different test events. And as well as giving spectator feedback to all the people who were working on those events, it was a great opportunity for us to try different methodologies and work with different agencies. So we used a huge variety within that. We tried SMS surveys, app surveys, online surveys, face-to-face on paper, face-to-face on PDAs. We really tried almost every combination we could think of to make sure that we were confident in what we chose for our games time methodology. So that was fantastically interesting, and it also gave us, say, great spectator feedback to be able to give to people whose venues were open for the first time, and who were doing great work in staging those events. So we then moved on, and in about Easter of 2012 we did our pre-games email survey, which was a little bit later than that. So it was after, this was with ticketed people, so it was a touch later than that. We did an online survey. We didn't incentivise it because we tested that test event and it made absolutely no difference to whether people responded or not, interestingly. We made sure that everybody only received, even if they had tickets to lots of things, we wanted to only really ask them about one thing, because we wanted to ask them quite specifically about the sport and venue that they were going to be attending. So we had a preference exercise sort of almost set out in terms of matching the number of tickets we had on our database. So for athletics, obviously lots got sold because it's in a huge stadium versus the Velodrome 6,000. So if somebody had a Velodrome ticket and an athletics ticket, we'd pick them for Velodrome. So we had that exercise going on. Sent out, a lot of surveys and got quite a good response on that. We were very pleased with that. Again, we did that on the basis of UK and international. With the UK, we were sending out unique links within an email invitation to ask people to complete an online survey. With internationals, although we had a few kind of European internationals on our own database who we did survey, we were largely reliant on authorised ticket resellers in other countries to send out our emails for us. So for that, we actually had to use an open link, which is not ideal because it means that people can't start and stop and start again, for example. They could forward it on to 100 friends. They could do it 10 times themselves if they could be bothered. But it was interesting. We had to sort of work with the two different methodologies because of the sampling issues that we had.
So what sort of response rate did you get from invitations to complete?
We're still working all that out for all the different the pre, during and post. So I can't tell you that precisely at the moment.
1, 2, 20, 50%?
How many did we get?
No,
I would say I can't tell you at the moment. We're still kind of going through all the figures on that. So, yeah. I think that's probably all I need to say on that. Again, I'm aware of time. Mystery shopping, we did just before the games. We did a fantastic piece of mystery shopping on our security, which was done by Happy Research, Hilary Mace, ICG. And we had people going through security at test events, looking for to sort of try out and rate different aspects. Also, some of them tried to take prohibited items through, for example, could they smuggle in a bottle of wine and that kind of thing. Really, really useful for LOCOG and for G4S, as it was then. Some really, really useful feedback, but also about things like how people found out the information about what they were allowed to take through and that kind of thing. So it was a really very helpful piece, quite close to the games, but it did allow some really good feedback.
So too late now, but
Peter managed to get his barrel of beer in.
so I say too late now, but could we have got a bottle of wine in? So,
No, I'm afraid not.
Yeah.
Those Gurkhas were pretty fierce.
Got me knitting through.
And then for during games, I mean, we had a massive task. We were doing face-to-face research at every venue on the first day of competition. We had an online and email survey going out 3 times a day, covering every session of sport and ceremony. We had an app survey running using geolocation. We were doing social media and web analytics monitoring. We were covering sport and ceremony spectators, Olympic Park non-event ticket holders, so people who were just going in on day passes to the park. Also Olympic Park common domain, as we call it, so monitoring what was going on in the park itself rather than actually in the venues within the park. We also, during the games, were doing work with non-ticketed people who attended the road race events like triathlon and marathon and the road race cycling. We were talking to people who went to live sites, the big screens around the country, various different locations. We were evaluating a selection of cultural events from the Cultural Olympiad, and we were also doing our regular general public polling. So we had all of that going on all at the same time, and we were doing daily reports, and that's why we all nearly fell down. But it was fantastic, but it was very, it was quite tiring. We were reporting back every day to the venues themselves, to different functional areas. So we had a report that would go to our catering, cleaning and waste team for things that were particularly relevant to them, for example. Our spectator experience team, who were kind of monitoring from on high what was going on and coordinating and picking up if there were problems. And we also had what we called the MOC, which was the main operations centre for the whole of LOCOG. And they were the ones that, if there'd been a crisis, it gets escalated there straight away. So we had a lot of audiences, a lot of reports to prepare, and there were a couple of times at 2 in the morning where we wished we'd had a lot less reports to prepare. I can tell you that. But it was fantastic when we started getting the feedback from people saying they were using them, which made you feel like you were really sort of contributing to the
I
game.
hope the ticket people were very much paying attention to all this.
Yes, they were. Yes, we had some reports for them.
That
Yes,
was
we
the
did.
nicest part of the whole experience, I would say.
Yes, yeah. Well, we were feeding back to them.
To what extent were you able to automate all of this during the games?
Not as much as we would have liked, but some. We had. There was a manual part of the process, but we were also, our reporting was set up in Excel spreadsheets, our daily reports for venues. So you were pasting, you were manually pasting the kind of whole data set in, and then it was set up so that it would pick up. So every venue had its own sheet, and you then had to, you then were able to just look at for that venue. You would write your commentary for that venue. And then that would be, so there was a manual part of that process, but we automated as much of it as we could. Just, realistically, we couldn't have managed
Yeah.
otherwise.
You were 4 at that point, presumably. Were you still 4?
Yeah.
So
We
you
had
went on
some-
holiday.
we had the social media was done by Selena, my colleague, but the 4 of us were the ones doing all the orange there during games. That was the 4 of us. Yeah.
So, as a sports lover in your dream job, did you actually get to see any of the Olympics?
Yes, I did. I'll come on to that. Yes, I did. Thank you for asking. Yes. Nice of you to think of me. And yes,
I was just wondering if you spent it all in Canary Wharf.
The first few days when we were getting all of this, obviously the first few days it was all new, and we were making sure that there weren't mistakes, and we picked up a few glitches, and that was when it felt like we just never left the office. But once we had it, a little bit more slick. We found that we were able to get through things more quickly. We were more confident in getting things out. Things took less time to check, and then we started having time to be able to actually sit down for 5 minutes and actually see some of the sport. So I'll just take you through the last couple of bits of this, which is just say we also did a post-games survey. We left it a couple of weeks just to try and get people slightly more considered opinion on their day. During games, we were asking people to fill it in as quickly as possible after their event, so that we had the feedback and that we were getting really their kind of emotional feedback from their visit. But we were also looking for that more considered response to see if there's any differences between what they say at games time and a little bit afterwards. And then where we are at the moment is in the analysis and transfer of knowledge phase, where we're doing a lot of work pulling together all the data and then handing that over to the IOC, to Sochi and to Rio, so that they've got hopefully a great base to work from, and it saves them, I hope, from having to sort of do duplicate work in a lot of these areas.
Is GB Limited going to be able to sell any of this data to them?
No.
No?
No. Because it all goes to the IOC, and the IOC wants to feed it.
You can't get any money back for it
No,
as a
sadly
country.
not.
Ask the budget.
I'll skip past that one. Challenges. I said I would talk about some challenges. As ever with any project, I think business buy-in is a mixed bag. We were very lucky that we had a lot of senior people who were very keen to understand the research findings and to use them. But some functional areas were very enthusiastic, some were less so. But one of the great things was turning that around sometimes. I had a venue manager, I shan't say which venue, who was an Australian and hadn't ever used research before, and quite frankly didn't give a monkey's about my research or anything about research. We actually went and did some research at his test event, and when he saw the feedback that we gave, he suddenly realised what research could actually do for his venue and how it could help him to improve things. And all of a sudden he was our best bud. He said, "Oh, hello research team, do you have any more information on this today? Hey, it's my new best friend. So that kind of thing was very, very heartening, and it was, it was very challenging, but we did find that we made good progress with most people.
Was he the guy that said, "Can you just"?
No, actually he wasn't. No, fair dues to him, he wasn't. Stakeholder liaison. I mean, we had to work a lot with the IOC. Their needs were quite different from LOCOG's. LOCOG's were much more, I would say, operationally focused. The IOC has a lot of, we need it to be like last time because we want continuity and we have tracking and and trying to marry those two things could be very frustrating, but that was something we had to work very hard at. Also, we had people like the GLA and lots of other people doing their own research and trying to kind of pull all that together and try and make sure that we weren't duplicating resource as far as we possibly could was majorly challenging. Questionnaires, just as you saw from what we were doing, the number of different types of surveys we were doing, the number of audiences, the number of venues, made that quite a task to just keep a handle on, really, in terms of challenges. Timings, I think I need to say no more. The sheer amount of data that we were getting in, again, was a challenge to think about how we managed that and how we processed it quickly and effectively and correctly, which leads on to the next point, which was something that we never factored in, which was actually tiredness. Genuinely, at 2 in the morning, and you're kind of just gaga at your screen. We had to have a checking process where nobody's work went out until another member of the team had looked at it, because at that point in time typos and things like that start creeping in, and of course that just lengthens the process. So you all want to be out with it at 2 in the morning, but it's like, can you just check my 3 reports? Can you just check my 3 hour? No, up your reports. I'm not looking at them. Well, we did have one of those moments, but it's probably not the time and place to go into that at the moment. So that was a real challenge to get past that and make sure that we were getting accurate stuff out, and it wasn't something that we'd thought about beforehand, and it's something that I would recommend to anybody to sort of build in some time for that extra checking. And the last thing, again, any project, the can we just have another question? Can we just have another 10 questions? Can we just have a whole new questionnaire? Can we have a new survey, please? 3 days before the Paralympics. Of course you can. Of course you can was always the answer. But can we just? Of course you can. And then you'd run away and go, ah! Just to sort of round off highlights, I mean, the biggest highlight was it kind of pretty much all worked out how we wanted it to. I don't know what bigger highlight you can have, really. There were the odd things, and I mean, this is talking about the research, but I suppose it applies to the games as well, really. It pretty much all worked out as we wanted it to. We'd put a system in place to try and manage that kind of level of activity, and that worked pretty well for us. The odd 2 a.m. moment notwithstanding, but it was pretty good. We had a lot of teamwork going on within our own team, within other teams at LOCOG, also other Nielsen teams that I really must credit, like our programming and data processing teams, who were available 24 hours a day to help support the team that was sitting in the office, and they are just as much responsible for that fantastic delivery as we were. So hats off to all of those there. The venue level buy-in, as I said, it was so nice. We started getting tales of, quite soon into the games, venues being very competitive about their overall enjoyment scores. Yeah. Believe it or not, we had the odd little email. How's Eton Dorney doing today? Would anybody like to take a guess at what the 2 most important factors were for the overall enjoyment scores going that way?
The weather.
One.
Number of medals.
British medals.
British medals, yeah. You could tell whether it had been a sunny day with British medals, because and it was a bit unfair because a couple of venues didn't get any British medals, so they'd say, how are we doing? And we'd go, well, for a venue that didn't win any medals. Some of the positive feedback we received was fantastic, and I'm just going to finish. We did get to see some stuff. I was lucky enough to see David Rudisha's 800 metres world record, which was just spine tingling. I actually...
In what? Sorry.
In what? Type question here.
800 metres.
Oh, sorry.
He's a runner.
Okay.
Yeah, 800 metres.
Finland.
Mo Farah's 5,000 was absolutely amazing, and I didn't actually see it in real life, but I thought Gemma Gibbons' judo silver was also an amazing achievement. This was just a few quotes from some of our, and this was just to finish off about the sort of highlights for me, the positive feedback that we got from some of our. Most of these are during games when we were getting feedback saying how they'd used the research. People saying they'd used it as a motivator, they'd used it they'd say jokingly as a bit of a competitive thing. Yeah, jokingly. That's why we're getting all the managers, the venue managers emailing us saying how's it going. So yes, some and that for me was a fantastic highlight to be getting that kind of level of feedback. It made all the 2 AMs worthwhile.
Yes.
So I have, if we've got time, Andrew, do you want me to? Can I go for the video?
We've got good time. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a video just to finish with, which I hope you'll enjoy. But while I'm just doing this, the other ICGer I'd really like to sort of mention and thank, without whom I think I couldn't have got through the last 2.5 years, is Midge, who for those who don't know is my partner, has had to suffer the Olympics in a way that no one else could ever imagine. So I'd like to thank him very much.
I do have a question here. Are you coming home now?
Soon. Still makes me go funny.
Super video.
Gave you a nice flavour to finish off with. It's something I feel very, very proud to have been a part of.